Now, after completing the exploratory data analysis, we can start looking at our research problem and then the research questions that we're going to pose on our data to understand the data and to understand how that data can contribute to a solution to our problem. So when I did my exploratory data analysis, I was focusing on length of game. But when I take a look at my data, I'm just going to open up my training data here. I see that most of the attributes are really attributes of the game itself. So I can see kind of the contributions to scoring and strikeouts. So that's really where most of my data is going to lie. I don't see data explaining that would allow me to understand the length of the game. So like the number of times the batter steps out of the box, the time between pitches, and so forth. So that data doesn't exist in this data set. So looking at understanding or looking at solutions to game length is really not going to be possible for this data set. So I'm going to shift my focus rather than on length of game, focus on causes of wins or causes of losses. So let's say, and I guess the first thing that I need to do then is really establish, well, what am I trying to do? What problem am I trying to solve? And so I'm going to go about the approach of saying I want the Minnesota Twins, my local baseball team, to win more. So what can the Twins do to win more games in a season? That's going to be my problem that I'm trying to solve, is to increase the winning percentage. So then I can then move on to some research questions. Now keep in mind that we're primarily looking at 3 of the 4 types of data analytics. We're going to be looking at descriptive, diagnostic, and predictive. So descriptive is going to be the questions that are going to be asking what happened. The diagnostic analytics will be asking the questions of why it happened. And then the predictive analytics will be asking the questions of what will happen. So looking at the data that I have, I'm going to start then with my descriptive analytics. I'm going to take a look at the Minnesota Twins record compared to other Major League Baseball teams since 1961, when the Twins came into the league. So if I take a look at that range of data, I want to look at the number of wins and losses each season and compare the win percentage to other Major League Baseball teams. So if that's going to be my question, and I want to do that so that I understand how successful the Twins are compared to other teams. And then part of that may be able to identify, which teams were the most successful. And if I, down the road, if I want to see why were they successful and the Twins weren't as successful, I can look at those attributes. So I think I'm going to start off with that then. What was the Twins' record compared to other Major League Baseball teams since the Twins' inception in 1961? And the purpose, again, is to understand where they lie compared to the other teams and overall, were they successful or not? Taking a look at the data transformations, this will be some maneuvers that I'm going to have to do because the data itself is going to be for each game. So I'm going to have to come up and figure out the number of games for each of the seasons, and that would be the seasons can be identified by the first 4 digits of the game date, and then figure if they were the winning team or the losing team, and then come up for each season with the number of wins and the number of losses, and then come up with then calculate that ratio, and do that not only for the Twins but for all of the other teams for each of the seasons. So there's going to be some work to do there. Now for this type of analysis, it's going to be most likely just a simple bar chart where I can compare winning percentages. The total winning percentages from 1960 to present for each of the teams, and just have one bar for each of them. And that's going to be a pretty simple model. So that's just a simple bar chart. And the justification is really I'm just looking at comparisons. Total win percentage versus for the Minnesota Twins versus all the other teams in Major League Baseball. So that would be the justification for that. Now next, when I look at my diagnostic analytics, what I'm going to do is I want to look at the Twins' record over the years. So again, I have their game date, and actually, you know what? With my prep in my exploratory data analysis, I also identified who the winning team was. So that's going to save me some time here. But what I'll do is look at the winning percentage for each of the years, just for the Minnesota Twins, and then plot that out. And for that, and so the purpose of that is so that I can understand if they had some seasons or periods of time where they were more successful than others, and then possibly that those seasons may have different attributes that would identify why they were more successful. So to understand why things happened, I want to start off by looking at the Twins over that time period from 1961 to present to understand which seasons were more successful than others. And the data transformation is going to be very similar to my diagnostic, or excuse me, my descriptive analytics, where I'm going to have to come up with winning percentages for each of the seasons. But in this case, just for the Minnesota Twins. And then what I'll do is I'll plot that out on a line graph or a scatter chart where I'm free. The x-axis would be my seasons or each of the years, and then the y-axis would be my winning percentage. And I'm going to use that model just because I need to show changes over time, and that will be the reason. That's my justification for using that scatter chart or line chart to display that information. All right, and then now on to my predictive. So this is where I want to be able to look at the Twins record and things that would help improve the Twins record, or factors that changed along with the Twins record. So I'm looking at some type of relationship. So I think one of the questions I could have would be seeing that if the an increase in hits, number of hits in a season, has any relationship with the winning percentage. So if we have more hits in a season, are we going to have a higher winning percentage in that season? So that's going to be a relationship between total number of hits in a season and the winning percentage in that season. So that would be since that's going to be a relationship, and I'm hoping that is most likely going to be a linear relationship, then I'm going to just use a simple linear regression model to evaluate that relationship between hits and winning percentages. And so that would be my justification for using that model. So that's my plan for this initial three forms of analytics: my diagnostic, descriptive, and predictive analytics, the questions that I'm going to ask of the data, and also the manipulations or transformations I need to do with that data in order to be able to answer those questions. So again, this is just looking at the data and see what's possible, understanding what problems I can solve with the data, making sure that the data is going to support those problems and the questions that I want to pose, ensure that the data will support that as well. So this is my analysis of the data and the kind of defining the questions that I want to pose in future analysis.